My name is Diane Morrison, and I'm 42 years old. They say you never really know someone until you see how they act when money's involved. Last week, I learned that lesson in the cruelest way possible, standing on my own doorstep, locked out of my home, 3 hours after burying my mother. My mother, Elizabeth, had been my anchor. When my father died when I was 12, she single-handedly raised me, working 2 jobs while getting her nursing degree. She taught me that strength wasn't about never falling, it was about always getting back up. Even as cancer ravaged her body these last 8 months, she faced it with grace that left her doctors speechless. Diane, she told me 2 weeks before she passed, I need you to promise me something. I held her frail hand, trying not to cry. Anything, Mom. Don't let anyone take advantage of your good heart. Not even family, especially not family. I thought she was talking about my deadbeat brother who'd shown up suddenly after years of absence, sniffing around for inheritance. I didn't realize she was warning me about the vultures I married into. My husband Robert and I had been married for 15 years. For most of that time, I'd been the primary breadwinner, working as a software engineer while he pursued his passion projects. A series of failed startups funded by my salary. His mother, Linda, had never approved of me. In her eyes, her precious baby boy had married beneath him. A woman should support her husband's dreams, she'd tell me at every family gathering, not overshadow him with her career. I'd bite my tongue, remembering that this woman hadn't worked a day in her life, living off her ex-husband's alimony and her son's occasional handouts, which really meant my handouts. The morning of my mother's funeral, Robert seemed distant. He'd been acting strange since Mom's diagnosis, constantly asking about her assets, her will, her house. I was too grief-stricken to pay attention to the red flags. I can't make it to the funeral, he announced as I was putting on my black dress. I stared at him in the mirror. What? Mom needs me to help her with something. It's urgent. More urgent than my mother's funeral? He wouldn't meet my eyes. You know how Mom is. When she needs something, she needs it now. I should have known then. Should have seen it. But grief makes you stupid, and I was drowning in it. Fine, I said, my voice hollow. I'll go bury my mother alone. The funeral was a blur. Friends from Mom's church, her colleagues from a hospital, neighbors who'd known us for decades, they all came. My brother showed up late, reeking of alcohol, and left early when he realized there would be no dramatic well reading like in the movies. Mom had been too smart for that. It was after the reception, after I'd thanked everyone and cleaned up the church hall, that I finally drove home. I was exhausted, empty, ready to collapse in my own bed and cry myself to sleep. But my key wouldn't fit in a lock. I tried again, thinking grief had made me clumsy. Nothing. The lock was different, shiny and new where the old one had been worn brass. Before I could process this, the door opened. Linda stood there in my entryway, wearing my mother's apron. The one with sunflowers that I'd bought Mom for her last birthday. Oh, Diane, she said with fake surprise. You're back already. Linda, what are you doing here? Why won't my key work? She smiled, the kind of smile a snake might give a mouse. This is my son's house now. I thought it was time we made that clear. I'm sorry, what? Robert appeared behind her, unable to meet my eyes. Mom's right, Diane. We need to talk about our living situation. Our living situation? I repeated, stunned. This is my house. We've lived here for 6 years. No, Linda corrected, stepping aside to let me see the locksmith's toolbox in my hallway. This is my son's house. A man's home should be in his name. Robert, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. What is she talking about? He shuffled his feet like a guilty child. Mom thinks, with your mother gone, it's time we restructured things. Put the house in my name. For tax purposes. Tax purposes. I tasted bile. I buried my mother 3 hours ago. Which is why this is the perfect time, Linda interjected. You're emotional, not thinking clearly. We're helping you by taking charge. I stood on my own doorstep, still in my funeral dress, staring at these people I called family. The morning's warning from my mother echoed in my mind. Don't let anyone take advantage of your good heart. You changed the locks while I was at my mother's funeral, I said slowly, letting the words sink in. You actually changed the locks on my house while I was burying my mother. Don't be dramatic. Linda waved her hand dismissively. We're having the deed transferred tomorrow. Robert's already signed the papers. We just need your signature, and then you can come in. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. "I see," I said calmly. "Well, let me get something from my car." They exchanged glances, probably thinking I was going to get my phone to call someone or break down crying. Instead, I walked to my car and pulled out a folder from my briefcase, the one I picked up from my mother's lawyer that morning before the funeral. I returned to the doorstep where they waited, Linda looking smug, Robert looking everywhere but at me. "Before we discuss any transfers," I said, opening the folder, "let me show you something interesting." I pulled out the deed to the house. "You see this? Notice the name on it." Linda snatched it from my hand. "It says, Elizabeth Morrison." My mother's name, I confirmed. This house was never in my name, and it certainly was never in Robert's. My mother bought it 5 years ago when she sold her old house. We've been living here rent-free because she wanted to help us while Robert pursued his dreams. The color drained from Linda's face. "That's impossible." "Here's her will," I continued, pulling out another document, dated 6 months ago, properly notarized. "She left the house to me. Just me, not to my spouse, not to my husband's family. To her daughter, Diane Morrison." "But," Robert started. "I'm not finished," I said, pulling out the final document. "This is an eviction notice. I had my mother's lawyer prepare it this morning when I told him about your strange questions regarding the house. He thought it was odd that you were so interested in property that wasn't yours." Linda laughed, but it sounded forced. "You can't evict us. Robert is your husband." "Actually, I can. You see, when you changed those locks, you established that you don't recognize my right to enter my own property. That's illegal eviction. But more importantly," I looked directly at Robert, "it shows that you no longer consider this a marital home. You've made it clear that you view this as your house, not ours. The law tends to frown on spouses who lock each other out." "Diane, please." Robert finally found his voice. "Let's go inside and talk about this." "With what key, Robert?" I asked. "You changed the locks, remember? I can't enter my own house." "This is ridiculous." Linda shrieked. "You can't throw us out. Where will we go?" "I believe you have a condo," I said evenly. "The one my salary helped pay the mortgage on for the last 10 years. That's a 1-bedroom. Then I suggest you start looking for somewhere bigger. You have 30 days. Robert grabbed my arm. "Diane, you're grieving. You're not thinking straight." I yanked my arm away. Don't you dare. I just buried the only person who truly loved me, and I came home to find you changed the locks while I was gone." "Who's not thinking straight?" "We were trying to help," Linda insisted. "By locking me out of my own home. By trying to steal my dead mother's house." My voice rose for the first time. "You want to help? Pack your things and get out. You need us to sign to get back in," Robert said desperately. I smiled then, and it must have been unsettling because they both stepped back. "Actually, I don't. This eviction notice allows me to have the locks changed back. The locksmith will be here in," I checked my watch, "about 20 minutes, along with a sheriff's deputy just to keep things civil." "You planned this?" Linda gasped. "No, Linda. My mother planned this. She knew exactly who you were. She saw how you treated me, how Robert let you walk all over our marriage. She made sure I'd be protected when she was gone." I looked at Robert. "She loved you like a son, you know, but she loved me more." The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Linda raged and threatened. Robert alternated between apologizing and accusing me of overreacting. I sat on my porch steps, and waited. When the locksmith arrived with the deputy, things moved quickly. The locks were changed back. I entered my house to find they'd already started rearranging things. My mother's photos were stacked in a corner. Linda's tacky paintings hung where Mom's watercolors had been. "You have 1 hour to pack essentials," the deputy informed them. "You can arrange to get the rest of your belongings later with supervision." Linda turned to me one last time. "You're making a huge mistake. No one will ever love you like my son does." "That's what I'm counting on," I replied. As they packed, I found more evidence of their plan. Papers on Robert's desk showed they'd already contacted a real estate agent about selling the house. They'd researched how to transfer deeds. They'd even looked up how long they'd have to wait after my mother's death to make their move. They decided the funeral was perfect timing. I'd be too distraught to fight back. They were wrong. Grief didn't make me weak. It made me see clearly for the first time in years. When they finally left, Linda clutching her garbage bags of clothes, Robert wheeling out a suitcase, I stood in my doorway, and watched them go. This isn't over, Robert said. I'll get a lawyer. That house is half mine. Get a lawyer, I said. Get 10 lawyers. The house was never marital property. It was my mother's, and now it's mine. Just like the hefty inheritance you were sniffing around for. Oh, didn't I mention? Mom left me everything. Her savings, her investments, her life insurance. All of it. His face went slack. How much? Wouldn't you like to know? I smiled. Here's a hint. Nurses who invest wisely for 40 years do quite well, especially when they live frugally and save everything for their only daughter. Diane. Goodbye, Robert. I closed the door, my door, and locked it with my new keys. That night, I sat in my mother's favorite chair, wrapped in her quilt, and cried. Not for my marriage, that had died long before my mother did. I cried for her, for the woman who'd seen this coming and protected me even in death. I found a letter in her desk, dated just a week before she passed. My darling Diane, if you're reading this, then you've discovered what I've done. I hope you're not angry with me for keeping secrets. I wanted to tell you about the house, but I knew you'd insist on putting Robert's name on it too. You always were too generous. I've watched that woman poison your marriage for years. I've seen how she treats you, how he lets her. You deserve better, my love. You deserve someone who would stand by you at your mother's funeral, not change the locks while you grieve. The house is yours. The money is yours. Your life is yours. Don't let anyone, not Robert, not Linda, not guilt, take that from you. Be brave, my daughter. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is say no. All my love, Mom. The divorce papers were filed the next week. Robert tried everything, tears, threats, promises to change. His mother called daily, alternating between vicious voicemails and syrupy attempts at reconciliation. I changed my phone number. The house felt different without them. Lighter. Cleaner. I replaced Linda's gaudy decorations with my mother's things. I painted the walls colors Robert had always vetoed. I adopted 2 cats from the shelter, something he'd never allowed because his mother was allergic, she wasn't. 6 months later, I ran into Robert at the grocery store. He looked older, tired. He was buying the cheap beer he'd always mocked. Diane, he said, shifting uncomfortably, you look good. I am good, I said, and meant it. I heard you started your own consulting firm. I did. With my mother's inheritance as seed money, I'd finally taken the leap I'd always been too afraid to make. That's great, he said, but his heart wasn't in it. Listen, Mom's been staying with me. The condo's pretty crowded. I was wondering if maybe. No, I said simply. You don't even know what I was going to ask. Yes, I do, and the answer is no. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You've changed. No, Robert, I just stopped pretending I hadn't. I left him standing there in the cereal aisle, holding his cheap beer and his regrets. People ask me if I'm bitter about what happened. How can I not hate them for what they tried to do? But the truth is, I'm grateful. Grateful that they showed me who they really were. Grateful that my mother saw it first and protected me. Grateful that when they changed those locks, they freed me from a prison I didn't even know I was in. They thought grief would make me weak. They thought I'd crumble without them. They thought wrong. Grief didn't make me weak, it made me bold. Bold enough to stand up for myself. Bold enough to say no. Bold enough to choose my own happiness over their comfort. My mother gave me many gifts in her life, love, education, strength. But her final gift was the greatest, freedom. The locks have been changed again since then. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I gave keys to people who actually care about me. My best friend Sarah, my cousin Maria, the elderly neighbor who waters my plants when I travel for work. Real family, the kind that doesn't try to steal your house while you're at a funeral. Linda still drives by sometimes. I see her car slow down, see her crane her neck to look at the house she thought would be hers. I wave from the garden, my mother's garden that I've expanded, where her favorite roses still bloom. She never waves back. But I keep waving anyway, wearing my mother's gardening gloves, standing in front of my house, living my life. After all, the best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's happiness. It's success. It's thriving in the very place where someone tried to break you. And every time I put my key in my lock, my key, my lock, my home, I whisper a little thank you to the woman who saw this coming and made sure I'd win. Thanks, Mom. I miss you every day. But I hear you in the walls of this house, in the strength you built in me, in the voice that says no when people try to take what's mine. Your daughter isn't just surviving, she's thriving. And she always remembers to lock the door.